Were there lookup and Meteor Man codes in the Superpowers halftime show? We covered the duality part and the mystery of the number 11. And over the years, we've talked a lot about this mystery and how it relates to celebrities and their alter egos. We have many examples of this that have been found all over YouTube throughout the years. We've talked about it several times, many times in many different videos, over 800 videos in almost a decade. So we won't revisit that part, but let's look at this. Let's dive deeper into the 50 Cent look up, quote unquote, part. Was there coding that suggested some relationship between the constantly pushed narrative of some outer space rock coming to destroy Earth, both seen in the movies Don't Look Up and in a lesser known movie called Look Up? There's always this narrative, at least in the past decade or so, or even more, of something coming to Earth. The dancers remember to do it before 50 does. Does what? Remembers to look up, as we recalled. He points up to where Mary is on the roof, playing the role of the outer space queen mother goddess. Ninti, Isis, Ishtar, Inanna, Diana, Oshan, Hera, etc. This is not actually a goddess, nor actually a female, but a spirit in disguise, and is used oftentimes to reference aliens. The dancers react to the impact of something landing on the roof as 50 points up to it. The Pepsi ball has always represented heavenly body symbolism. Some used to say of Earth and Mars combined. Some say of the mothership called Nibiru, which the fallen first used to disguise themselves as gods from the sky, ancient summer. In the halftime show opening, it travels through time and space like a comet or a planet-shaped ship, and what seems like fragments land in California. This same story is paralleled in the performance itself. But maybe those aren't supposed to be fragments that land after all. Mary's landing may be to represent an alien. Any time that the Queen Mother Goddess is evoked or spoken of on this channel, note that sex kitten programming must also be implied, hence the leopard print. But as a former P-Funketeer, this image reminded me of another album cover. Some notes on Mary's role in the story. She is the QMG, or represents the Queen Mother Goddess. Again, a spirit masquerading as a female. Queen is how we spell it in modern English, Q-U-E-E-N, but in older versions of this language you will find it spelled Q-U-E-A-N. Look that up and get your mind right. Want to be kings? Get your minds right too. You want to be like the elite and keep the rest of us under your feet. Too many cooks in the kitchen spoil the soup. This is why kings fight. They are selfish by nature. Be careful when you want to be like the powers that be, whether they be melanated or not. Their pride, ego, and unfairness is inevitable and a part of human nature, which is why the saying absolute power corrupts absolutely was coined and is still true today. It also is an expression of do as thou wilt, as kings do what they want to do, fair or not, to the people that they consider as their subjects. To be a king or queen, you have to lord rule over someone. This is why the origin of those words, when you look them up, it's not positive. It's very negative, because kings and queens were negative. Proof of internet scrubbing. They want you to be like their Queen Mother Goddess. For the fans of the SWS, you will find the live stream where we showed the screen live as we went to Google search box, entered in etymology of queen, and the very first thing that you saw is that Q-U-E-E-N originally meant whore. It's buried now, and I soon expect for Snopes to do an official debunking, because they want the men to be boys, niggas, babies, and thugs, and they want the women to be bitches and whores. This is what they desire. So they put out these narratives. We think it sounds good because of low self-esteem, and rightfully so, but now there's time for the age of revelation. We have to begin to look twice at some things and who calls themselves kings and queens. In the Old Testament, the Most High wanted Israel not to elect a king. And here it is thousands of years later, and we still desire to be like slave masters just because we see them as being our color and draped in gold. No better than wanting to be like the dope man, and whether you rock with the Bible or not, or have an antichrist disposition, you can't miss the point of what was just said if you listen and have comprehension. You can't miss it. It is the nature of kings and queens, both black and white, and the fallen ones want us to become vessels and empty ourselves and be open to these negative ideas. Here's the album cover I was referring to. You see the pyramid symbolism, surprisingly common but often unnoticed, but Sister Nkeche caught it also. Thank you, sis. Insiders know, and some of you think all entertainers are gender benders. Some are. Do you think Barry White was born a girl? The Queen Mother Goddess isn't really a female, though Mary is. The fallen can imitate females and they can procreate and copulate. It's my fault for not wording it properly. They were not made to reproduce themselves naturally and are the fathers of test tube insemination and the like. Now I hope that that's cleared up a little bit. We do know that the gender benders exist and the transformers are real, but that's not what this is about. So let's move on. They've been preparing us for years for something bigger. There's bigger fish to fry. Parliament Funkadelic offshoots like Brides and Parlette, as well as the unaffiliated labels, wore these futuristic outer space whore uniforms as well, and for the same reasons Mary had hers on, to represent the Queen Mother Goddess, the way secret societies know that she really is to be represented, not the way silly New Age fantasy depictions sell her to uninitiated or lower degree women. I did not always know this, but the Queen of the Universe, Mother of Civilization spell that is prevalent among brothers and sisters in the conscious community, quote unquote, is also paying homage to these fallen angels in drag. From what we know, and I have not always worded it as well as I should have before, the angels were not designed to fuse sex organs to reproduce themselves. This is why Genesis 6 describes their taking of human wives as abominable to God. Some sort of artificial insemination technique was likely employed because of the physical impossibility of them naturally copulating. We know in part some things. Russ Dizdar, L.A. Marzulli, Steve Quayle, and Tom Horn are controversial, but have done excellent work diving deepest on the subject of the Nephilim. Also, check out Gary Wayne's The Genesis 6 Conspiracy. And rest in power to the aforementioned truthers.
I couldn't help at one point in my discussions privately with General Secretary Gorbachev, when you stop to think that we're all God's children wherever we may live in the world, I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species from another planet outside in the universe. We'd forget all the little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together. Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us we can bring about that realization. In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war? I think maybe I'd answer it this way. I keep, in my frustration sometimes, you know, actually, if you count some of the things going on in smaller countries and all, there have been about 114 wars since World War II. But I've often wondered, what if all of us in the world discovered that we were threatened by a power from outer space, from another planet? Wouldn't we all of a sudden find that we didn't have any differences between us at all? We were all human beings, citizens of the world, and wouldn't we come together to fight that particular threat?
If we were lied to about the very nature of outer space, then what exactly is the Star Wars defense system, initiated by and introduced to us through former California Governor and President of the United States, Ronald Reagan. At 69 years, 349 days of age at the time of his first inauguration, Reagan was the oldest person to assume the U.S. presidency. He waged the staged war against the Panthers and the black community at large via his war on drugs campaign and survived an assassination attempt during his first term. He helped bring in the Bush years via G.H.W. Bush, Poppy, to his surprise, because that was his surprise running mate and the former head of the CIA. He got bullied, bogarted, Buffalo into taking Poppy on as his running mate, which changed everything from that point forth. Actors and presidents, California, is now the time for this predictive programming to manifest in a Hollywood scale event orchestrated throughout the world by Project Bluebeam or SDI. Sister Sunshine 87 noticed something that may also connect this halftime show to something coming from space within Kendrick's part. Yes, the blonde on black symbolism and brainwashing go hand in hand, as we've seen it before, like in Snipes' portrayal of a futuristic psychotic criminal in Demolition Man. So let's note that part as well. The brainwashing part, we got that. But was there more to it? Did it relate to this aforementioned plan of the elite to one day use aliens to bring in the one world order? Full of symbolism in its own right, there were more similarities to another lesser-known film than Demolition Man, and that is Meteor Man, full of boule superstars and a B movie. But don't dismiss that B. Subtle Saturn Chronos references in his logos. And that B can also symbolize a 13 movie, or a movie where they've hidden things that the 13 or the Illuminati don't want you to catch outright in a big major film. Some of those things they hide in a B movie film. So here you see some similarities to the Nemesis and his crew, and Kendrick Lamar and his crew during the halftime show. The blonde-haired, carbon-copied, brainwashed bad guys, goons, are called the Golden Lords in the Meteor Man movie, where the Golden Lords are reference to brothers and sisters, or in this case, brothers, who had been duped into venerating the ancient beings who called themselves gods and fooled many a great quote-unquote civilizations that are no longer standing to this day because of their adherence to those gods. Black or white? Yes, a definite whitewash. But the Illuminati whitewash both good and bad historical figures. They don't want you to make certain connections, whether you make them through history's good guys, bad guys, or indifferent guys. So don't run towards something just because they've whitewashed it that's silly and carnal-minded. All ancestors of any people are not good or bad. Plus, the problem of every civilization has been the greed and devilishness of the leadership, whether royalty or boule wannabes. The same as it was then, so it is today. As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the last days. Just as ancestor Moses stood up against the royalty and the civilization that they built under the guise of being royals who had a divine right, who were related to gods and goddesses, and they subjugated his people. Well, today we have people who want to identify with the slave masters just because they think them to be black and ancient, still slave masters. Now let's get back to the Meteor Man connection. And again, this is how the boule operate. They brainwash the brothers, and they get the brothers to believe that they are gods, and they point them back to these ancient fallen civilizations. In the movie Meteor Man, Robert Townsend is a mild-mannered school teacher in Washington, D.C. His neighborhood is terrorized by a local gang called the Golden Lords, led by Simon Kane, wink, and allied with drug lord Anthony Byers. One night, Jeff steps in to rescue a woman from the gang, only to end up running from them himself. Hiding in a garbage dumpster, he manages to escape. As he climbs out, he is struck down by a glowing green meteorite. His spine is crushed, and he receives severe burns. A small fragment of the meteor was left over and taken by a vagrant named Marvin, who was portrayed by boule bigwig at the time, Bill Cosby. Oh, Bill. Reed awakens several days later in the hospital, but when his bandages are taken off, he is miraculously healed of all injuries from the falling object. This is how Meteor Man is born in the film. The Meteor Man is a 1993 American superhero comedy film written and directed by, co-produced, and starring Robert Townsend, with supporting roles by Marla Gibbs, Eddie Griffin, Robert Guillaume, James Earl Jones, Bill Cosby, and another bad creation. The film also features special appearances by Luther Vandross, Sinbad, Sinbad, Naughty by Nature, Cypress Hill, and BDK, Big Daddy Kane. Townsend stars as a mild-mannered school teacher who becomes a superhero after his neighborhood in Washington, D.C. is terrorized by street gangs. Kendrick Lamar. It is one of the earliest superhero films to feature an African American in a starring role. Did Kendrick even write and produce his own segment of the halftime show? It's not very likely. It's likely that that was put together for him to help to create this story for the halftime show. This story about something coming down while people are partying and having a good time, like there was with the 50 Cent in the club section. But how does Meteor Man and the Queen Mother Goddess connect? Well, Ishtar is said to have crashed down in a space egg, a round object. Now, Meteor Man takes place in Washington, D.C., where there are key streets laid out in the patterns of 5 and 6 pointed stars, but it is built upon a ley line they find to be empowering. It is also a city-state, and in the district of Queen Mother Goddess, Columbia, coincidentally. In any Project Bluebeam alien deception, or in any guiding down of a space rock or apparent inherent extinction level event, DC would figure prominently. Though I don't think they're talking about it landing there. Here's another example of where the facts in the books prove to be different from the experienced truth. Read up on the backstory of this Columbia, a specifically unique Queen Mother Goddess that's assigned, quote unquote, to America. This again is nothing but the same old being disguised in a different way to appease to the people of a particular civilization, to look like them, modeled after Greco-Roman gods and goddesses, who were modeled after black Egyptian gods and goddesses, who were modeled after the fallen angels, disguised as gods and goddesses. It's all bad. And our capital is in the District of Columbia. This city-state is one of 3 in the world like it and dedicated to her, separate and unlike other states. So much so that people protest and want statehood for the people of D.C. You can even look at a Washington, D.C. driver's license and see it's something different. This is the district of this particular Queen Mother Goddess, representing a fallen angel. She's about that life, warfare, and witchcraft. So her defense center is the center of a pentagram and called the Pentagon. It's located in D.C. along with other key buildings and monuments that help keep her in power. Keep in mind, it's a devil in drag. The NNSA is one of the federal agencies with responsibilities for planetary defense, or detecting and mitigating impact threats from potentially hazardous near-Earth objects, such as asteroids and comets. These efforts are part of an official national security focus for the U.S. And here you see, here's their website. It's a real site and a real thing. And if the nature of space is not as we have been told, like many of us suspect, everybody doesn't have to believe it, that's fine. Everyone has different narratives and different researches that they lean towards. We all have some sort of opinion bias. But if we're correct, those of us who doubt the nature of space and much of what they've told us about it, then why would you need this federal agency if there's really nothing coming from outer space and we're shielded and protected by the Most High? Perhaps so that you can put out this meteor propaganda and bring forth this fake New World Order by way of alien landing. So in the Meteor Man, Jeff soon discovers that the meteorite had left him with spectacular superpowers, such as flight, X-ray and laser vision, superhuman strength, speed and hearing, invulnerability, healing powers, the ability to absorb a book's content by touch, super breath, telepathy with dogs, and telekinesis. Confiding this to his parents, Ted and Maxine, they convince him to use his powers to help the community. There's also a Ted in Look Up. His mother designs a costume, and the Meteor Man he takes on the Golden Lords. He shuts down 15 crack houses, stops 11 robberies, brings peace between the police, the Crips, and the Bloods, where they begin to work together to rebuild the community they destroyed, and he plants a giant garden in the middle of the ghetto. Oh, if we who call ourselves gods, if those of y'all who call yourselves gods could do half of that, then maybe I'd be subject to believe you're onto something. But this is what they promise when you go through these secret society rituals. The alchemy is to turn you into God, not base metals into gold. But the Golden Lords learn Meteor Man's secret identity and his slowly diminishing powers. As the violence gets out of hand and the Golden Lords continue their attacks, the community members plan to make a deal with them, but Jeff instead teaches them about fighting for their beliefs. A now powerless Jeff fights Simon and is beaten up. Simon points his gun at Jeff, but Jeff's neighbor, played by James Earl Jones, throws a record at him, successfully knocking the gun out of Simon's hand. Suddenly, Marvin uses the meteor fragment to strip the Golden Lords of their guns. Marvin, Bill Cosby, the vagrant. This enables the locals to stand up to the Golden Lords as they fight them alongside Marvin's dogs. Marvin accidentally drops the meteor, and both Jeff and Simon grab the rock from both sides, both gaining superpowers, and then they engage in a supervillain versus superhero brawl. And again, the promise is that through New Age, through these alien beings, through their promises of a better world, you can finally reach godhood and goddess status, which is a lie from the devil. They're led by the bad guy Simon, who is turning the boys in the hood into these Golden Lords. When Simon is about to throw a dumpster at Jeff, he hears Ellington, Jeff's dog, barking, telling Jeff that he can win, and throws the dumpster at Ellington instead, seriously injuring the dog. This angers Jeff, and he disappears and returns as Meteor Man. They continue with their brawl, with Meteor Man winning and draining Simon of his powers by absorbing them. He then defeats the rest of the Golden Lords. The locals all gather around Ellington, who is now lying on the street whimpering in pain. Jeff uses his x-ray vision to see that Ellington's ribs were broken. Before Jeff can do anything, his powers fade away again. But just then, Marvin comes over and uses the last of his powers from the meteor fragment to heal the dog's injuries, thus saving Ellington, the dog's life. The locals all applaud. Anthony Byers and his gang then confront Meteor Man, but are outnumbered by the Bloods and Crips, who show up to protect Meteor Man. Anthony Byers and his gang are then arrested by the police after attempting to take, quote-unquote, a vacation to the Bahamas. And again, Meteor Man as a B-movie is laden with a lot of nonsense and B-movie fodder, but at the end of the day, was there something that they were trying to say by having Kendrick's dancers dress and look like these Golden Lords, who were obvious representatives of Freemasons? So were Kendrick's dancers. So there's more than just the look that's similar. There's also the brotherhood connection that's inherent and obvious, though symbolic, in both the Golden Lords from Meteor Man and in Kendrick's performance. They even come out of boxes, perfectly square boxes, as square men, which is one term that Freemasonic men will use to refer to themselves. 30 boxes, Kendrick is in one of them, which leaves 29, which means 2 plus 9, 11. Again, the duality of these made men. The similarities are uncanny. You just can't deny. Look at this. Standing in the same stance as Freemasons even. They even have on the ribbon or the sash, which is considered to be the decoration of a court official of the Chamberlain type or the stole of a priest, according to FreemasonryMatters.com. So this symbolism is definitely related to Freemasonry, without a doubt. You might think we're stretching with all the things we're catching, but just look for yourself. Read. Do some research. A lot of interpretations of Masonic symbols are open to the public because they don't expect for you to put together the grand design or the great work, the magnum opus. But again, the sash, which is mirrored in baby Freemasonry, in other words, the fraternities and the sororities of colleges and universities, are baby Freemasons, and they also do many of the same things. Also, within Kendrick's part, the Golden Lord clones not only look like Freemasons by their attire, but if you note, they're standing in the position as if they were on the chessboard as pawns to be moved around, just like they actually do in the real lodge. And not only that, but you'll see him standing on his square, playing his role in the chess game, Kendrick himself. He did make To Pimp a Butterfly, which gives me the indication that he was somewhat aware that mind control was going on around him. It is always something to compare or to add to Freemasonry whenever we're talking about that, because the mind control is evident. Were these squares filmed from overhead so that we would see them form human sigils atop the map of LA over select neighborhoods? Now, I forget who brought that to light in the comment section, but I know that you will remind me. And I thank you for that, because I do believe that you're up to something. Now, not being from the Los Angeles area, I don't know these neighborhoods, but it does appear that they are dancing and positioning themselves as sigils over particular parts of the map, a small area. I don't know if that's Compton proper. I don't know if it's LA proper. I don't know if it's downtown LA. Someone who's from the area and familiar with the map could probably recognize that better than I could. But I do know these are sigils. And those are used to open up gateways and allow for entities to come in. So were they symbolically doing that? Were they symbolically tracing on the map like they trace on the board? The brainwashing part of the ritual of Freemasonry is to help cause you to conform, to make you into a square man, a new creation, a new creature for the new order. Now, the elite Greeks kept these secrets from the commoners. They learned it from the elite Egyptians, who kept these secrets from the commoners and enslaved them through these secrets and the magic taught to them by the spirits that control the lodge, for real, fallen angels, that the Egyptians also mistakenly called the gods and the ancestors, like many of you do today. Greece fell. They followed Egypt. Egypt fell. And the U.S., which was established upon this same mystery system, is going the same way. And every Freemason man and Eastern Star woman has a role to play. The secret of secret orders and societies is that they serve spirits and willingly open themselves up to be houses for these spirits to inhabit. Now, fraternal, from the Latin for brother, frater, and sororal organizations, Latin for sorrow, sister, is also known as brotherhoods and sisterhoods. They recruit the ambitious, not really a good quality. And they are breeding grounds for grooming new potential Freemasons and Eastern Stars. The Divine Nine, black fraternities and sororities, Greek organizations, are especially useful to the powers that be because it helps teach assimilation and conformity to the black community, be it by way of its stars, talking about black fraternities and sororities. And it also helps to control and shape the way that the majority of the community thinks about and responds to the gradual moves made toward the great work of the secret societies of Lucifer. This is a key reason for racial separation within the lodges. The most obvious thing to point out here is the Freemasonic connection. Everything else is a distraction. There was nothing that he was doing that related to Hebrew Israelite. Everything he was doing was related to this Freemasonic understanding. So much can be said about what's wrong with wanting to be like Greek mystery system initiates, or any for that matter. So when looking for potentially compromised individuals within these secret societies is the first place we should look. Conformity, uniformity, oath-taking, and secret-keeping, all in order to climb the ladder of success. But it's even deeper than that. The true secret of secret societies goes back to the royalty of ancient Egypt and Babylon. Every movement in the dance that frats and sororities do in a step show is part of telling a story, not unlike you find in the hula dances of Hawaii and many tribal dances that are found worldwide. No harm in telling a story, but what's the story being told here? And if these spirits that you mistakenly believe to be your ancestors can inspire you without your knowing, then who or what is really telling the story? So you open yourself up to become vessels for these spirits through the use of these dances and rituals. And let's get this part together. Ancestors is a vague term, so vague that it gives supernatural permission for anything that may have the ability to claim your ancestry to hop in you and cause you to hop around. Were all your ancestors righteous? How is it then that by calling on the ancestors you think you will only get instruction from the good ones? And again, in every community, the brotherhood and sisterhood members are celebrated, but especially in the community where we feel that we don't have enough representation. We feel economically and socially disenfranchised. And so we root on those folks who appear to have, quote unquote, made it, but made it at what cost and at what amount of sacrifice, not only of themselves, but of the community that they come from. Here's a pose that they were doing within Kendrick's portion of the halftime show that reminded me of the pose that we saw the frat brothers doing right before that frame. The oath takers are cookie cutter brothers, prepackaged by the owner of the eye atop their pyramid, the true God of the lodge. Because of the oath and need for uniformity, they are predisposed to conformity. It would be easier for the true head of their lodges if all the world would conform as well. That's why they want to indoctrinate us all. They come out of the boxes raging. I don't understand what that was exactly, but we will. Perhaps those who do conform will be I, so to speak. One thing that's promised to brothers and sisters of these orders is that they will be taken care of. When everything goes left, they will have a spot because of their obedience and because of their affiliation to the lodge. They will have a spot, and their families will also be spared from much of what the rest of us have to endure as they play this chess game with living bodies and living people. The front line, or the pawns in the game, think that they are the royalty or the kings and queens of the game. We're all being used as pieces on this chessboard and manipulated as such. But none so much as those who take these oaths and mistakenly believe that the promises of the capstone true God of the lodge will be kept. One thing that he is not is a promise keeper. Do you get it yet? The passed pawn is a criminal who should be kept under lock and key. Mild measures such as police surveillance are not sufficient. And so, is Kendrick aware of this? We are. We certainly are, as it's easy to see that this is Freemasonic symbolism, and specifically talking about the Boule or the black fraternities and sororities. And how will they play a part when something hits or lands in LA? How will the gangs play a part? And also there's the Saturn symbolism and the worship of Saturn, which is just another way to worship Lucifer. The symbolism is even found again in the Meteor Man logo. And the worship of this cube or this square is but yet another way to worship Lucifer, Egyptian style, and in various disguises he presents himself, because a smooth criminal is going to make sure that he's a master of disguise as well. And we find again that brotherhood men help to keep those disguises in place. It's going to take us all to combat this new world order, these Saturn worshippers, Satan worshippers, these worshippers of Kronos. And they're always out to change God's order, these fallen angels, especially through the brotherhood. So they teach them that we're both male and female. This is why you'll see brotherhood members end up doing Swedish things and get kind of sassy and sissy the further they go up the ladder. And I think that was shown by the drop earring worn by Kendrick and the Golden Lords, as well as the brooches and other things that are traditional female jewelry. And it's obvious that he's gotten into some sort of new age ideology. Being a brotherhood member means conformity, and that you have to do what Big Brother Almighty tells you to. We learned that even watching School Days. Look at the Crossbones logo on School Days. It's poison and it's death. But again, it's celebrated because a lot of folks are just happy that their loved ones or their brothers or their sisters have made it to college and have made it in life. Because if you join the brotherhood, they will try to advance you in whatever is your given field. Those connections that you're promised, right? When you join a fraternity and sorority, you're promised to have these connections. But you don't understand what that truly means if the devil is the prince of this world. Brainwashing, which is a misnomer, is part of frat hazing, Freemasonic ritualization, and government mind control programming as well. It's a misnomer because it's really brain dirtying. It's also tied to demonic possession. The target is brainwashed or personality wiped so that a spirit can then be inserted in place of the person's original personality. The government copped to it but claimed they no longer do it. The monarch butterfly is associated with it as it transforms from caterpillar into a new creature. Monarch also means king, and this inserting of a spirit into a child was the practice of kings and queens, taught to them by the fallen, disguised as gods and ancestors, so that the children would grow up as vessels for these spirits. And again, Kendrick's most critically acclaimed album was called To Pimp a Butterfly. Could this be coincidence or coincidence? It's also common to find this mind control programming in the entertainment industry, as we see James Earl Jones, the neighbor figure, has on a Kansas City Monarchs jersey. The Kansas City Monarchs, one of the teams from the Negro League, a league established so that blacks could play. The Kansas City Monarchs were the longest running franchise in the history of baseball's Negro Leagues, operating in Kansas City, Missouri, and owned by J.L. Wilkinson. They were charter members of the Negro National League from 1920 to 1930. J.L. Wilkinson was the first Caucasian owner at the time of the establishment of the team. In 1930, the Monarchs became the first professional baseball team to use a portable lighting system, which was transported from game to game in trucks to play games at night, 5 years before any major league team did. The Monarchs won 10 league championships before integration and triumphed in the first Negro League World Series in 1924. The Monarchs had only one season in which they did not have a winning record. The team produced more major league players than any other Negro League franchise. It was disbanded in 1965. This could be why James Earl Jones has it on. This was during a time when this movie came out, A Different World and The Cosby Show, and a lot of shows were, and movies like School Days were promoting black history and knowledge of self and understanding where you came from. But does all of this relate back to Deep Impact? And some idea, again, is all of this coded and related because it's all pointing back to this one idea that they've been repeating now for many years, and some folks have been expecting, other folks have heard prophecies about, some folks have seen evidence that this is indeed a plan that they will one day enact if all else fails. Is this the pentagram portion of the DC streets beneath Meteor Man? Comic book editors and the guys behind Marvel and DC both are brotherhood. Here you see the Washington D.C. street layout again for those who are unaware of that. And could this Meteor Man connection be the way of and the Kendrick Lamar section of the highlight of the Super Bowl halftime show? Could this be highlighting this idea that from Washington something's going to come? And this is all about the remaking of you. The 6-pointed star and the 5-pointed star equaling 11, to remake you, to make you a new creation or creature in Lucifer. Coming also from DC, we get this build back better idea. Who are they trying to build back better? In truth, you think it's a what that they're trying to build back better. That's And the three sixes cannot be missed in that. Well, Dr. Dre was the man behind the boards, and the man of the day was Dre Day that was on their sashes. And it appears that he understands this symbolism from his Beats commercials, even from the design of the Beats logo and the color scheme usage. The color scheme usage, the red, white, and black, again, these are all colors and frequencies that the Creator made available to us. However, the Luciferians, and to be particular, the Satanists, use this color combination for their flag. Oftentimes, we'll see celebrities use this same color combination to show and prove their allegiance to Satan, whether they belong to the Satanic Church or not. The handlers behind this talentless industry plant knows the colors and what they mean. Time magazine knew the colors years ago as they announced the adversary's comeback as a dying society began abandoning the church. Here you see more proof that this is the color scheme that the Brotherhood understand. They are to associate with Satan and Satanism. And these stars represent sigils, just as Kendrick's dancers placed in particular positions over LA are to cast or appear to be like these stars to create portals and gateways through which they believe entities can enter. And the most famous of which is in DC. So could that be the connection there also with the Meteor Man? Now, what is a comet? It's a body of ice, rock, and dust that can be several miles in diameter and orbits the sun. It originates from a comet or asteroid. A meteoroid that enters the Earth's atmosphere and vaporizes is called a meteor, they say. And again, because they lie so much about the nature of space and the things in it, we don't know what they actually truly know. But they have to keep these narratives alive in the public. It's part of the revelation of the method, a form of witchcraft where they show you something and get you to take part in the imagining of it so that they can then produce it in reality later. So they could have been showing us all of these things for all of these years just so they could produce this false flag. So many movies have this premise of an enormous space object crashing into and destroying the world. There's even a comedy, Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, starring Steve Carell. Are these movies just playing off of long-held irrational fears, or are these predictive programming propaganda pieces pointing towards the Project Bluebeam event that many of us have been expecting them to pull off as the big joker if all else fails? And is it really a space rock that they're programming us to expect? Some say it may be the Brotherhood's plan to project an alien threat that feeds off of the UFO disclosure deception. And the UFO disclosure community also plays their role, unbeknownst to the sincere and honest folks that are a part of that community. They want you to be a part of this expectation of some great announcement that something has landed and someone has come to save us and teach us how to be gods. This is also mirrored in the movie Armageddon. It's interesting how these two movies, Armageddon and Deep Impact, both had the same premise and came out the same year. But ever since we were children, they've been programming us to expect something from outer space, or to believe that through outer space we can get powers. The movie 2012 even also features something coming from outer space and crashing into the earth, causing these great catastrophes, that, as a matter of fact, a shower of things coming down, causing these great catastrophes. Look at the titles on the promo pics from 2012, the movie 2012. A lot of folks were programmed to think that was going to be the end. But in the movie 2012, when a aircraft carrier is being turned over by a tidal wave, oddly enough, you can see it's the USS John F. Kennedy, but look at the numbers and letters after it. But the letters and numbers after it, better said. 2012 is a 2009 American science fiction disaster film. It's based on the 2012 phenomenon. Its plot follows a geologist and novelist as they experience a sequence of events including earthquakes, volcano eruptions, mega tsunamis, a global flood, all of which were imagined by subscribers to the hypothesis. In other words, people were expecting this, and folks in 2012 were really looking for some strange things to happen because they believed the Mayan report. Whose report will you believe? They also used a lengthy advertising campaign which included the creation of a website from its main character's point of view. What a way to mix fantasy and reality, right? And a viral marketing website on which filmgoers could register for a lottery number to save them from the ensuing disaster. 2012 was released on November 13th, 2009, to commercial success. It grossed over $769 million worldwide. The film received mixed reviews, some praise for its visual effects, but criticism of its screenplay and runtime. Deep Impact was one of these movies that also featured a black president, as did 2012. Deep Impact was released in the same summer as a similarly themed film, Armageddon, which fared better at the box office. While astronomers described Deep Impact as being more scientifically accurate, both films were similarly received by critics, with Armageddon scoring 38%, Deep Impact scoring 45% on Rotten Tomatoes. Deep Impact grossed over $349 million worldwide on an $80 million production budget. It was the final film by cinematographer Dietrich Lohmann, who died before the film's release. Sometimes that's an indicator of something Illuminati or illuminated going on behind the scenes. Deep Impact released on May 8th, 1998. And generally when two films are too similar or the premise is too similar, they don't generally come out during the same time period unless there's a program that they're both enforcing. Armageddon released June 30th, 1998. And Armageddon starred Bruce Willis, who's been in his share of Illuminati Code movies. Armageddon was a 1998 American science fiction disaster film produced and directed by Michael Bay, produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, and released by Touchstone Pictures. The film follows a group of blue-collar deep-core drillers sent by NASA, never a straight answer, to stop a gigantic asteroid on a collision course with Earth. Despite mostly negative reviews, the film was a commercial success, grossing $553 million worldwide and becoming the highest-grossing film of 1998. Astronomers noted that the similar disaster film Deep Impact was more scientifically accurate. And again, they'll make money from these things. The snake will make money biting its own tail. It'll bite its own tail to make a couple of dollars, but following the money will never lead you to the core or root truth or agenda, because they are beyond money. They print the money, and once they become so wealthy, money is not the goal any longer. The goal is power and control of people. So it's interesting that both of these movies did so well, made a lot of money, but they also put something in the public consciousness. Coincidentally, 1998's Deep Impact, as well as 2009's 2012, both feature a black president, both disaster movies, as some saw that as a disaster, and they fed into that, I'm sure. Predictive programming concerning Obama, playing off of the fears of those who suffer from fear of a black planet syndrome. Possibly predictive programming and revelation of the method concerning Kamala, who is likely to be president if they slow old Joe all the way down to zero. All of them devils and witches. Obama, Kamala, Bush, Trump, inauguration, to make one an augur. So is this the big trump card that they're holding? And did the Pepsi halftime show allude to it? Showing and proving that it was the Saturn worshippers or the Satan worshippers who were behind putting together the symbolism, assembling the show. We are told that Dr. Dre paid for everything, quote unquote. What does that mean exactly? Was it that Dr. Dre, feeling nostalgic about his hometown of Compton, wanted to say goodbye? Why did they use this intro for the halftime show as the Pepsi ball coming down like some space orb? It comes down and it crashes down into the community. We know it's the community because we see a little black boy riding his bike. So that's the symbolism we are to take from that. And we're to take from all of this, again, that something comes from outer space. And I do contend and maintain that it's not what we think it is on the surface. Could there be something coming because they've made a deal that now's the time it should come? Once they get mankind divided enough? And is it coming down to LA, Hollywood, where the biggest productions are done? Science fiction and special effects have a Illuminati purpose that's greater than to entertain us. Science fiction and special effects is to prepare us for these beings revealing themselves as our space brothers, those who seeded mankind. Oh, all religions will fall, Abrahamic and otherwise, should they come down here and tell us that they created them all. Or is there some extinction level event? Which again is not likely if we are in an enclosed place, which is part of the reason why the discussion about the nature of the earth and how it's contained, what the Bible says about that, is a valid discussion. It's not one that we're having right here, right now, because folks are polarized on both sides. But I maintain it's not a comet coming. It's not an asteroid coming. I maintain it's not a space rock. They may tell us that it is at first. But it may very well be the predictive programming that they've given us for years. It may very well be that that predictive programming was to prepare us for the fallen returning, in much the same way that the Sumerians said that they left. And was Meteor Man and all of this symbolism in the halftime show telling us this in a story? Most notably symbolized in 50 Cent's and Mary J's portion? We don't know. But we're supposed to be watchful and prayerful for sure.
What's the world coming to?
They belonged to a sinister secret society. Their symbol was a black dragon. Take a good look at these humorless men.